We would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we meet to share these conversations on the Vegan Compass podcast.
We extend our respect to elders past and present, as well as any of our listeners and guests. Hello and welcome to the Vegan Compass podcast, unveiling truths, inspiring change. We are your hosts, Ric and Mackenzie Cross.
From wherever you're listening, please be sure to like and subscribe to support this podcast. Now to the episode.
Hello and welcome to the Vegan Compass podcast. It's Mackenzie Cross and Ric Allport with you today for another guest episode.
And we are so very happy to have Amanda Holly, who is here from AnimalKIND, formerly known as Animal Liberation. So it's wonderful to have you here. I've known you for many, many, many years, probably more years than we want to mention. So Amanda, who are you and what do you do?
Thank you for having me, first of all, guys, and congratulations on the new podcast. It's great to have more vegan content out there.
Thank you.
And thanks for inviting me to come on. So I'm Amanda Holly. I work at AnimalKIND, and as Ric mentioned, we were formerly Animal Liberation Queensland. I am WA born and bred, grew up in the Pilbara region, and I have been living in Queensland since 2016. And that was around when I really started to get into activism. So I was aware of Animal Liberation Queensland through their Greyhound live baiting expose, which was back in 2014, 10 years ago now, and wanted a way to get involved. So I quickly joined the board and was lucky enough to become a full-time campaign manager back in 2019. So I've been doing that ever since. I also founded Brisbane Animal Save, which is part of the Animal Save movement, and also sort of operates as a campaign under AnimalKIND.
Amazing. I didn't know that about you.
And I've known you all these years and I've just learned so much more in the first 2 minutes.
It's amazing that we don't, even though we know each other, we don't really know a lot of people's backstories in the activism.
Yeah.
Well, I guess because every time we get together, we're doing some sort of either protest or outreach and planning different things, that we never actually sit and have a coffee or a meal and go, hey, where did you come from? See, I always thought you were Queensland born, but never realised you were Western Australian born. So that's pretty cool. So I must have met you when you came to Queensland.
It would have been, because as I said, I quickly got involved with Animal Liberation Queensland, and it was probably the first animal rights forum on the Gold Coast. I imagine I would have met you then. That would have been 2016?
Oh, somewhere around there. We've done so many of them now, So, I'd say possibly 2016. So, very cool. Okay, so we briefly touched on that you've moved from Animal Liberation to now AnimalKIND. So my question to you is, why the name change?
Can I actually interrupt before we go to this? Can we do a bit more about Animal Lib Queensland? Because you've been around for a really long time. And I've heard you talk before about some interesting things that the organisation did a while ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's rewind.
That was the order of the questions.
I skipped.
You skipped one.
I had my finger on the wrong question. Okay, we will backtrack. Please ask your question.
No worries. So Animal Liberation Queensland has been around for a little while. Can you tell us when exactly you started, and I guess the history of the organisation, what kind of things Animal Liberation Queensland has worked on over the years?
So Animal Liberation Queensland has been around since before I was born. 1979 it was founded by a woman by the name of Jackie Kent. And it was around the same time that the other state animal liberation groups were formed off the back of Peter Singer's book Animal Liberation, and up until recently, it's been a completely volunteer-based organisation. There's obviously been a lot of history, a lot of stuff that's happened well before my time. But some of the notable sort of campaigns that ALQ were involved in, things like, and this is really wild to me, but they helped get duck hunting banned in Queensland back in the early 2000s, and for that activity to be banned in Queensland and not other more, I guess, what we would consider to be progressive states like Victoria, I think is a real achievement. Always campaigning on a wide range of animal protection issues, such as, rodeos, factory farming, horse and greyhound racing. The greyhound racing expose in 2014 was also another really big pivotal moment for the organisation. And yeah, more recently, being able to have full-time staff members and, being able to really ramp up our campaign work has been quite important in the last 5 years.
That's great. Thank you for covering the history in a nice summary.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, I never actually realised how long ago Animal Lib was started. Okay, so we've moved now to the new name, which is AnimalKIND. What was the catalyst for the change?
I want to preface this by saying that I love the name Animal Liberation. It was one of the reasons I got involved. I think it's, the more radical activist in me loves that name. I guess primarily it was time for a rebrand. So organizations and businesses and everything should be rebranding fairly regularly, and we were very, very well overdue. And we started discussing a name change due to the need to reach more people. So what we were finding is that we were doing these really important and really impactful campaigns, and putting out media releases and things like that. And it was always very, very difficult to get mainstream media coverage. Or they would run a story, but they wouldn't mention us. Or it would, the type of coverage would not be particularly favourable, or it would be sort of slanted towards these extreme activists and not really telling the story about the animals or the content of the campaigns. So that was I guess we wanted to create more opportunities to, first of all, get that mainstream media coverage, which gives us the ability for our campaigns to reach a far wider audience. But it's also meeting people that perhaps aren't quite there yet on the animal rights sort of message, not sort of putting them off with a name that might sort of seem to be a little bit more radical with those people. So we chose the name AnimalKIND because of its, obviously its connection to kindness, the link between animal kind and humankind. And the impact so far has been really positive. So our feedlots campaign that we launched back in May had extremely good media coverage. They named us. They talked about they talked about all the findings in the investigations, and we have sort of found that it's been beneficial so far. So.
Can you share any links you have to that? Because it'd be really good. I think a lot of the listeners will be really interested to see how you've picked up more media with that name change. So yeah, if you can, because we'll have show notes so we can put everything in.
And it's great to hear that you're already reaping the benefits of the name change almost instantaneously.
I have to admit, I got to admit I was dubious at first, and I think I talked to you about that, and I was, concerned. But now hearing that it's actually having an impact, yeah, it's changed my mind. So yeah, well done.
Thank you. It was a really, really scary thing for us, the board and staff, to go down, because there is such a legacy that we want to. We want to honor that legacy and the decades of work and that's sort of come before us. And so, we've done our best to sort of honor that legacy, and we have so many supporters that have been with us since the beginning. And it's obviously, not wanting to upset those people. But ultimately, our focus is for the animals, and if we can have a better impact for animals, then that was the most important factor for us.
Well, I still wear my Animal Liberation Queensland hoodie, the vintage hoodie with pride. So yeah, I still fly that little flag in the background.
Hold on to it for another couple of decades, and it might be worth something as memorabilia.
They'll bury me in it.
I love that. So I remember a specific campaign from a couple of years ago, Imogen the pig. I think this was probably my first exposure to Animal Liberation Queensland. So can you tell us a little bit about Imogen's story for those who might not have seen it on social media, and how did Imogen's story become a catalyst for other work around pigs and pig farming?
So Imogen's story is something that we captured as part of a campaign that we were working on called bacon.org.au. So there is a campaign website that people can visit. And obviously that was all around the Australian, more Queensland pork industry. And we were in Kingaroy capturing footage. So Kingaroy has the largest pig slaughterhouse in the Southern Hemisphere. It's called Swicker's Bacon Factory, which is awful. It's owned by Sunpork. And we actually managed to randomly get an Airbnb, which was literally over, not the back fence, but sort of shared a property boundary with the slaughterhouse. So we took that opportunity to hire that for a few days, and that meant that we had a really good base to fly a drone. And obviously it was close enough that we could still see the drone, and far away enough that we weren't going to be detected. So over the course of a few days, we sent the drone up maybe 6-7 times just to capture the unloading of pigs from the trucks as they arrived at the slaughterhouse. And on this particular morning, we noticed that there was a pig that was down, which she couldn't walk. She was down on her sort of front legs, and common sense told us that they were probably going to have to kill her on the ramp. So we kept the drone in the air for the whole ordeal lasted about an hour and a half.
Wow.
So we had to sort of keep bringing it back and then sending it over. I'll have to be careful with what I say, because this matter is still before the courts.
Okay, yeah, of course.
But what we witnessed was kicking, hitting, sort of quite a lot of rough handling of this pig, and also other pigs that sort of came to check on her. They kept unloading trucks sort of around her. They sprayed her with a high pressure hose. There was sort of a lot of mocking and stuff going on. and quite horrible and distressing.
And just to clarify, the reason for this was to try and get her up and off the ramp into the slaughterhouse. Is that right?
That's what we obviously we can't sort of say with any certainty, but it looked like they were trying to get her to move and walk down the ramp. And eventually after about an hour and a half, we captured the horrible slaughter. So a slaughterman came out and used a captive bolt and then slit her throat, and it was obviously very, very distressing to see.
Horrific thing to watch live unfolding in front of you.
It was horrible. But I guess if that's things like that happen all the time, and if it is going to happen, then I'm grateful that we are able to get her story out there, and that's obviously made it that's been a very impactful story. It's been seen by millions of people, and it was ultimately two of the men that were seen in that video have been charged. I went to court in May as a witness, and it's going back to court again in December, I think, for the third day of the trial. So they have pled not guilty, and it's ongoing. So.
Okay, wow. So just to ask a couple more questions, like, excuse my ignorance, but the court case, is this because the act of killing Imogen on the ramp is illegal, or was it the rough handling of her that you've deemed, that's malpractice, or how did the court case come about, I guess?
It's for cruelty, so it was the mishandling of her on the ramp. So the slaughter was completely legal, completely I guess by the book.
Right.
We did sort of question whether or not she was adequately checked for consciousness. But that hasn't sort of been something that's been brought up by Biosecurity Queensland.
Oh, wow. That's
really confronting.
Yeah, unbelievable. Did they actually notice like the drone going around at all? So they had no idea that was there. That's actually pretty cool. So yeah,
it's we kept it pretty high. Obviously at the legal height, but at 120 meters, it's very, very hard to hear them anyway. We're fortunate that we've got a drone that we can zoom in, and those environments are very, very noisy anyway. There's trucks and there's, alarms, and there's lots of pigs. So it's, usually they're very, very hard to spot, even when it's in the air, and they're usually only detected if someone hears them. So drones are very, very a very, very handy tool for animal activists.
Yeah, that's excellent. Now, you mentioned before about feedlots and one of your latest campaigns. What does that entail? What's been happening?
So in May this year, we launched our Aussie Feedlots campaign. So this is something that we've been working on for about a year and a half. And it came about because, first of all, Queensland has a heap of feedlots, over 200. I think it's 40% of the nation's feedlots are here in Queensland. And I was really surprised that even in the animal rights community and animal activists, not many people have actually seen one. And so we wanted to change that. So we started investigating feedlots by visiting them, having a look around with a drone. And we just, there was just so many wild things happening at these feedlots, things like effluent runoff and just disgusting conditions. And there was one where we found there were some cows that had either died or been shot, and they were sort of dumped on the edge of a big compost pile. And then all of a sudden, these domestic pigs appeared and started eating the carcasses of these cows, which is a massive biosecurity issue, as well as being utterly repulsive. And yeah, just effluent spills being really commonplace. Obviously things like lack of shade and shelter. And so we, after sort of investigating a couple of dozen, we wanted to make it a much more comprehensive investigation, because so often the industry will say things like, this is just a few bad operators. So we got some more funding, and we ended up investigating 75 feedlots. We actually did a little over 80, but a few of them were either really small or had closed down, or just didn't have cows in them when we visited. And we profiled all of those feedlots, put together videos, critical information like how close they are to waterways, which is another really surprising thing that I think most people don't understand, is how close these places are to rivers and creeks and things like that. And yeah, we've put it all on a website called AussieFeedlots.com, and that's now there for people to go and have a look. There's an interactive map so people can see, especially in rural areas, what feedlots are close to them. And yeah, that's been a very impactful campaign so far.
Yeah, very interesting, because as you said, a lot of activists tend to focus on factory farms and the more intensive situations, but feedlots are another aspect of intensive farming.
They're factory farms.
Yeah, exactly. And something that doesn't get a lot of attention. So it's amazing that you guys are drawing attention to that. And we will put the link to Aussie Feedlots in the show notes as well, so people can check it out.
And I think this is the thing too. There'll be the misconception of them saying, "Oh, but our animals, they're out in the open. You know, they're getting fresh air, and you know, they're getting sun, and they're well looked after, and you know, we could call them free range if you want." You know, and the public will get that misconception of they're well looked after. So doing the feedlot campaign, that's really huge.
Thank you. Yeah, we're really happy with it, and we have plans to expand on it. So yeah, watch this space.
Awesome. So you also do a lot of work around rodeos. I see a lot of content on your social media about rodeos. Apart from the obvious reasons, why is this so important to try and bring an end to rodeos?
Well, again, like the feedlots thing, rodeos, Queensland is the home of rodeos. We have rodeos here all the time. There's multiple rodeos around the state every single week. So the number of animals that are impacted is quite extensive. And these, you know, obviously they're used over and over again. There's some pretty horrific events in rodeos that are still happening. Things like calf roping and steer wrestling and things like that that are really awful events for young animals. It's not only the obviously the inherent cruelty that happens within the rodeos, but it's, you know, they're having to constantly travel. If and when, you know, then they all end up at the slaughterhouse as well. So it's, the rodeo industry is the meat industry. And I guess it's, you know, people are taking their kids along to these events, and there's this cultural sort of idea that this is just a fun family sort of day out. And I think that that's something that we really need to start challenging. Well, we are actively challenging, but I think as a society, these attitudes towards animals as just being something that, you know, can be used and exploited for fun and for entertainment is quite backward. And I think most people, if they pause and actually have a real think about what's happening to these animals, they would probably disagree with it. It's also really quite wild that it's so heavily supported by governments and businesses and corporations and things like that. So that's something that we want to challenge as well.
Yeah, and they say that they love their animals and they look after their animals better than their children. And you just look at what they do and you think, well, if that's how you treat your animal, how are you treating your children? It's just one of the most. It's rodeos I never get. It's to me, it's the lowest of the low.
It's bizarre, and there's nothing like natural about it. The whole concept of it is just strange, isn't it? Strange form of entertainment.
They say, you know, what are you going to do if you're on a farm and you need to get a cow in, you know, and we're practicing to be able to do that on a farm. And you're thinking, hang on, when on a farm are you going to be jumping on a cow and trying to wrestle it to the ground, or a calf for that matter, and then tie its legs together? I mean,
it's never timed on a farm. Like, sometimes they do have to, you know, catch animals with ropes and things like that. But these events are timed, which puts so much more stress on the animal. And yeah, it's that whole argument is ridiculous.
Well, it's like the bull riding and, you know, the bucking bulls and the bucking horses. When on a farm would you be trying to ride a bull? Like, it's the most ridiculous thing. Yeah, the whole thing is just mind-boggling.
And I mean, it's things like the flank straps and you know, the spurs and it's all of those tools that they use, electric prods. You know, we have seen it on horses. That they are still used routinely on bulls and steers as well. These animals that they say, oh, they're bred to bark. They're taught to bark, and they're
riling them up.
They're forced to bark under extreme stress and you know, fear. It's an industry that is completely based around fear and exploitation.
So brings us to, of course, as we all know, investigative work can be really, really risky. So what are some of the challenges or risks that you and your team have faced?
Ooh, I've had some doozies. Yeah, just thinking about what I can talk about. But yeah, look, I guess when you are way out west, it's very isolated, and there's not usually anyone around if you do sort of need help. So there's always risk management and risk assessments that go into any investigation that we do, and we have strategies and procedures in place to make sure that we're kept as safe as possible. Before my time at AnimalKIND, I was part of an investigation on a dairy farm, and the dairy farmer actually woke up because the cows all started mooing. We were in a milking shed, and he actually started shooting.
Wow.
And that was definitely the scariest thing that has ever happened to me. As a result, we actually ended up calling the police.
Wow.
Tables have turned.
Yes. Which is, you know, not something I ever thought I'd do, but that seemed to be the safest option at the time. And you know, of course, we were arrested and faced charges, and he said he was shooting at foxes. So yeah. Which anyway, that was definitely a big eye opener for me. And as as a result, I'm a lot more careful. Working for AnimalKIND, of course, everything that we do is legal. So we use things like drones, long lens cameras, and things like that, which having that sort of equipment does make it a lot safer, because you are able to sort of stay a fair distance away and usually undetected. But as I said, when you're out west, you see, trucks, and you'll take the opportunity to go and film in a truck. And there was another occasion where a truckie got quite grumpy with me and threatened me with a cattle prod. And
Oh my goodness.
in those sort of situations, I use de-escalation techniques. That's just something that I guess I'm naturally kind of good at talking people down, and in most situations. And I think that that's really important, is not sort of meeting people at their level, just sort of trying to talk them down and not get zapped with a cattle prod.
For sure.
Oh my goodness. So, given all of those challenges that you just listed, what motivates you personally to continue in this line of work?
The animals.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's, I'm someone that cares about a lot of social justice issues. But what I think that other sort of social justice issues have a lot of people that, first of all, there's people with lived experience that are able to advocate for themselves. And then there's a lot of funding for other social justice movements, and there's a lot of attention. And I feel like animals don't get that same sort of attention and opportunity. And I guess that's because the majority of the population are complicit in the exploitation of them. So that for me is the sort of driving factor. It's because there's so few of us. I'm very, very fortunate to be in a position where I'm able to do this full time as a career. And, I never take that for granted. It's something that I feel really grateful for every day. But yeah, animals need more of us speaking up for them, and they need people that have the skills to be able to, put campaigns together and advocate in an effective way. And, that's something I keep striving to do and build on.
So this actually brings me to something that is very close to my heart in a couple of ways. As you know, I had to step back from doing animal rights activism for a number of years due to the heart attack I had from distress and PTSD. So how do you deal with the ongoing exposure to so much animal abuse, because you are seeing so much in day out? What are you doing to actually de-escalate yourself?
This is something that I've probably only become good at over the last few years. And it's things like creating boundaries. So not living it 24/7 is so important. It's being able to turn off, not at the end of every day, but at the end of most days, and having time for myself. Having stuff outside of the animal rights community is so important. So I had a big lifestyle change a couple of years ago, and I got into powerlifting of all things. So that's something that it's been a game changer for my mental health. Just that regular sort of activity and exercise, and that challenge for myself. I have amazing support networks within the animal rights community. You know, there's just, as you both know, there's just some phenomenal people that I can sort of bounce off and, you know, be there to support each other. My wonderful colleague and friend Lyndall, who I work with a lot, just having someone like her around that sort of, so we don't even need to say anything. We just sort of, you just sort of know. And yeah, it's, I think definitely having stuff outside the animal rights space, not living in that bubble because it's not healthy and it's not real life. You need to have connections and stuff outside of the animal rights community, and just knowing when you need to take a little bit of time out and then just to pause and say no to stuff and not try and do everything.
That is so important. And I think my major problem was I didn't do any of that because I was just 24/7 in animal rights activism and animal rescue and all the other things that went alongside that. And I never gave myself any time to just have me time.
It's not sustainable. It's, there's no other line of work or anything where you would just be living it 24/7. And also, you know, even other areas where people are exposed to traumatic materials, you know, there's usually support services and resources available to them. We don't have that because we're, you know, we're underfunded and all of that. So,
well, that brings me to the book that I created. And it wasn't supposed to be an ad for the book that I created, it's called The Empowered Activist, which is talking about how activists can look after themselves, because we lose so many activists from burnout, PTSD. And as I actually say in the book, it's the book I wish I had before I started in activism.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's to create a resource that we don't have. So yeah, hopefully activists who are listening into this will take it on board. And I'm giving away 50% of profits to animal sanctuaries and rescues whenever I can. So yes, that we'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah, put that in there. Yeah.
So a bit of a change of tune. Amanda, you recently ran in the election, Queensland state election for the Greens. So how was that experience and how did you go?
So I just want to preface this by saying this is completely separate to AnimalKInd. AnimalKInd is, being a charity, is politically independent, and everything I did for that political campaign was obviously completely separate to AnimalKInd. But yes, I ran for the seat of Ipswich.
Oh, tough seat. Yeah, very tough seat.
But I happen to live in Ipswich, and that is the branch that I'm part of. So yes, I went into it hoping for a 2.5% swing, and I got a 2.2% swing.
Ooh,
so
close.
That's
yeah, so I was very pleased with that. I loved the experience. I'm very much a people person and an extrovert, so I love getting out there and speaking to people. And I was really proud of the Greens policies. So especially around things like, housing and cost of living and social justice issues and things like that. So being able to get out there and, make more people aware of those and swing voters was a really great experience. So it was something that I'm glad I did. May do it again, not sure. It was a lot.
Yeah, that's how I felt after running for AJP as well. It's amazing to talk to everyone, but it can be really draining to have all of those questions from people at the polling booths, have other candidates sort of pestering you a little bit about some of the more controversial policies, things like that.
I was one stage where there was me and one other Greens volunteer, and then there was 7 LNP and something like 11 Labor.
Yeah.
And it was like 2 of us Greens, like trying to, it was a lot. But
when I ran for AJP in Mermaid Beach, and I was at the main polling booth, and I had one of the One Nation Party representatives coming up and started having a go at me and calling me a weak vegan, all this sort of stuff. And I said, "Oh, have you met the person who is beside me here?" And it was Billy Simmons, who was Mr. Natural Universe, vegan. And I said, "Just like to meet Billy." And he's just gone, "Oh, jeez." And he's just turned around and walked away. And I thought, yeah, exactly. And I thought, I am so glad Billy was standing right beside me at that point in time. It was very cool.
That's really funny. So, Amanda, was there anything else you wanted to mention before we wrap up about AnimalKIND, or anything else in your personal experience with activism, or I guess future plans for AnimalKIND?
I guess I'd just like to give AnimalKIND another little plug.
Yep.
You know, I think like most organisations, and not just within the animal rights movement, but other movements, COVID really kind of kicked us, and we lost a lot of volunteers and donors and things like that. So if you are listening to this and you're interested in the work that we do, you know, we would love your support, either volunteering or becoming a monthly supporter for as little as $5 a month. It helps us greatly with our campaigns. It helps us travel further and get to more animals and expose more industries. We've got some big things coming up in 2025. So yeah, support would be greatly needed. And I guess my message to animal activists is just, you know, yeah, come back out, you know, come to a vigil, come to an event, you know, let's get back out there, because everything that we, you know, we had such huge numbers back in 2018 and 2019, and all of the reasons that we were doing that are still there. There are still hundreds of thousands of animals every day in Queensland arriving at slaughterhouses. You know, there's, you know, horse races, greyhound races, rodeos, all of it. It's all still happening. It's not just still happening, it's actually increasing. The numbers are going up, not down. So the animals need you. So yeah, if there's a way that you can get back involved, that, you know, aligns with yourself, and yeah, please do it.
And I think too, people don't have to get out to every campaign. You know, just pace yourself. But I'm right there with you. I've been sort of recently back out on the hustings, so to speak, and I have been very disappointed with the lack of people who are turning up to support. And I get it. I understand why people are hesitant to be sort of out and about now, but right now is when we need you the most. It's when we need people back on the road, back at the protests, speaking up for the animals, but again, taking care of their own personal health.
And there are ways to get involved that don't involve, you know, I totally get that, not, you know, that social events or protests aren't for everyone. There's so many other ways that you can get involved. We have volunteer hubs once a month where people can just come along and do some research work. We always need researchers. There's so many ways to get involved. So yeah, just reach out to us, reach out to another animal rights organisation that might be in your, you know, city or state, and yeah, find a way, because we've all got skills and stuff, and we can all there's something that we can find for you to do.
Well, there's even things like petitions and sharing social media posts.
Government submissions.
Yep, government submissions. Yep, everything. There is so many ways that you can do it from behind the scenes if you don't want to be out in front. So yeah, we really need more people on all different levels of activism.
100%, yeah.
Amazing. I feel like this is a really good way to round it out.
Yeah, it's been just absolutely wonderful talking with you again. Yeah, always miss, you know, all the wonderful activist friends up on, you know, up in Brisbane and the Gold Coast.
We miss you too.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's where I sort of, how do I explain it? it's where I cut my teeth. I guess that's probably the best way. So how can people get in contact with you? What's your social media and email?
Socials are all AnimalKInd Australia. My email, info@animalkind.org.au, and animalkind.org.au is our website.
Amazing. We'll put all of that in the show notes so people can easily access that. But thank you so much for your time. It's been amazing to talk to you, Amanda. We really appreciate everything that you're doing and everything that AnimalKInd is doing to advocate for animals. You've given us, some really great evidence of, what you're doing to make huge strides for animals. So thank you.
And can I just say, I've seen you blossom over the years. And you, to me, are one of the most inspiring activists that I've ever worked alongside. And, I love everything you do. I love you as a person. And I'm proud to call you just a really good, close friend. So thank you so much for everything you're doing.
That's so kind. Thank you so much.
Well, folks, that brings us to the end of just an amazing episode. And we've learned so much. And we often walk away from these and go, wow.
Every time I think,
every time.
Wow, we've learned so much.
Like we think we know a lot, and then we walk away and go, my goodness, we hardly knew anything. So
we hope our listeners really appreciate all of the information too.
Yeah. So thank you so much for your time. We appreciate everything you do.
Thanks, Rick. Thanks, Mackenzie.
Thank you.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of another wonderful episode. So
yes. See you all next time.
Yeah. Okay. So bye everybody. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Vegan Compass podcast, unveiling truths, inspiring change.
Be sure to follow us on social media at @thevegancompass_podcast. See you next time.